AI has had a lot of tells, right? And those tells have evolved. So it started with the M dash, right? Then it was like the formatting of just kind of these bold statements and structure. But now it's actually certain phrases that are constantly repeated. There's like many leaders that I have admired over the years. I love the content they produce. But if you just go straight from creation to publishing without your own judgment, your own personal experiences, I've already started to lose trust in those leaders. I miss people being human. Like I miss people just really being themselves. This is a time for marketers to really take a step back and decide where can they be more strategic with their content, how they can view even LLMs as a new persona, not just a new channel, how they can be really thoughtful in creating better content. And for me, I don't mean quantity, I mean quality. So most companies right now are seeing a massive plummet in their traffic. The reason why is
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me on Finite by Clarity. Today's episode is awesome. We're talking content, zero-click search, personalization, and AI slop. Basically, changing B2B buyers and how our content should keep up. Our guest is the incredible Elizabeth Maxson, CMO at Contentful and former CMO at Tableau. Elizabeth has some great advice on what websites should look like in 2026, deeply specific and data-driven segmentation, and how to balance content quality with quantity. Hint, should we really be doing quantity at all? Definitely some great thoughts around how to scale, but also what we should be scaling. I do just want to flag that this episode is not sponsored by Contentful. Elizabeth does mention them and their capabilities for marketers. And honestly, it sounds like a really cool product and at least offers a very interesting way of thinking about digital experience. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for joining me on the Finite podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's great to have you here. We are discussing kind of changing B2B buyer expectations and buyer journeys more generally, diving into, all kinds of things around that, digital experience, zero click, everything in your kind of remit there. Before we do that, we always ask our guests to introduce themselves, kind of explain your career so far, how you got into marketing and how you got to Contentful as CMO today.
Great. Yeah, I have a pretty unique background, to be honest. Maybe not the most natural path to CMO. I started out in the events industry, working on the agency side of the house, supporting major conferences all over the world in technology and automotive. Soon got brought and introduced into Salesforce, and they were a customer of this agency for many years. And that is where I then became in-house. I spent over a decade at Salesforce in a variety of different roles, from events to corporate messaging and content, supporting mergers and acquisitions, and then started leading some really great marketing teams. I led marketing efforts associated with our strategic technology partnerships, launching Google and Apple, AWS as a couple examples. I also was head of marketing for Quip, which was a previous Salesforce acquisition, transitioned into working on Tableau, where I became the CMO of Tableau for about a year and a half. And then that brought me to Contentful. So will be celebrating my 2 years here later this fall. And it has been a really amazing time with Contentful, especially in the world of content. So much is changing with content. And obviously we care a lot about content and how that gets deployed, how that's being both read by agents and humans, and has really opened up a lot of opportunities for marketers. So it's a hard time to be a CMO, but also a really exciting time to navigate all this change together.
Exactly. That's what I'm always going on about. I have CMOs coming on saying, Jodi, it's the Wild West out there. So we just have to really learn from each other and kind of peer into each other's kind of strategies and how we're arming ourselves against all of these changes.
Yes.
What's happening with content at the moment from your perspective? How is it changing? How are you adapting, particularly in, the digital experience space?
Yeah, we've been really thinking about how content has been evolving and really We're calling it a collapse, a great content collapse, in fact. And if you think about just starting with CMOs, we're constantly being asked to do more with less. That's nothing new, right? Like that's a standard thing. Marketers, do 10% more with 20% less, budget or people. But now there's this new filter of being able to do that with AI, right? So there's pressure there. The second part of this is all of the content that is being created with AI that is AI slop. It's all starting the same. It's not breaking through the noise. And in fact, consumers are not even attracted to that. Like they are not falling for it. And it's actually really hurting trust within brands. And then the third part of this is then it's affecting your funnel. Like what is the funnel these days? The top of the funnel is collapsing, your content strategy is collapsing, your budget, your people is collapsing. So we think this is kind of a crisis moment, to be honest. And I think this is a time for marketers to really take a step back and decide where can they be more strategic with their content, how they can view even LLMs as a new persona, not just a new channel, how they can be really thoughtful in creating better content. And for me, I don't mean quantity, I mean quality. Often I see this use of AI is just like, oh, I can do more, which is totally true. You can produce at lightning speed, but that doesn't mean that's necessarily the right thing to do. And so something I'm always advising marketers that I'm meeting with is more content does not equal better content. Better content equals better content. And I think when teams have that more top of mind, that can really help develop their strategy and support that in a much better way.
I think it's interesting how you mentioned that the funnel is collapsing. What does that exactly look like to you? Do you just mean kind of top of funnel is full of AI slot, middle of funnel isn't on your website anymore, it's maybe on social media or through influencers, bottom of funnel is like one-on-ones with AI agents instead of sales teams? How does that actually come to life for you? How does that collapse? What does that collapse look like?
So I think it comes in a couple different forms. Like you just gave a perfect example of one way that could collapse, right? So now I'm like, well, it's could collapse a lot of different ways. But if you take a step back, I mean, if you think about it, we've all been trained on thinking about the funnel in like a 3-step process, right? Well, it's no longer a funnel. We actually think of it, instead of being a 3-course meal, it's now a buffet, right? Consumers and buyers are now able to consume the content where they want to consume it. And so it's a different way of thinking about making sure that you really are meeting your buyers where they are at. And to be honest, where you're meeting them may be on a different part of that journey, right? And so I think it's reevaluating the channels that you're in, how you're investing from like paid to the content that you are creating. You still need to have that same awareness, the same type of content to support the different stages. But I think it's the realization that they're not coming in that order. They might be coming in a different order. Another part of this where we see it in the digital landscape is how much this is affecting your website traffic. So most companies right now are seeing a massive plummet in their traffic. The reason why is they are getting all of their information in answer engines first. And that has changed. They're also getting it with GEO in their Google searches. It's been amazing to see how that has changed of just a dynamic of behavior. If you think about this, a couple of years ago, a standard Google search was 6 words. Now it is 37 words or more, and how descriptive that we are getting. I like to give an example. I'm a mom of 4. So let's say like 4 years ago, it would be like, great mom shoes, like what are some like great tennis shoes, for a mom on the go. Now it's like, hey, I'm a mom of 4 kids under 8 who lives in Northern California, who likes to hike in the morning, but transition to the playground in the afternoon. What do you suggest are my best shoe options, to support those activities? Like that specificity is getting so crazy that we're now expecting this personalization in that content that is coming back. And so what I think is interesting is how to think about your website a little differently, from a place of if, buyers are getting all of their information from LLMs, then what are they getting from you by the time they reach your website? In some cases, you could say they're more highly qualified, right? And so how should you be shifting maybe more towards down a funnel on your website because they're getting all that information elsewhere?
Absolutely. Well, that was going to be my next question is like, what is the website now? Went through this huge evolution from like just being, a shop window to this marketing engine, right? Is it going back to that kind of shop window mentality again? Or does it still have a place in that discoverability strategy? And does it still have a big place in getting into those LLMs in the first place?
100%. It 100% has a place. I think what's interesting, when I speak to a lot of customers, they have asked, do I need two websites? They're thinking about it of how do I have a website that fuels humans and meets humans' needs? And how do I have a website that also supports agents? And I think what we're really learning more about is how agents are crawling content and how you can create your content to be able to do both, right? And so there's ways to do that, from the infrastructure of how your website is set up to the type of content that you are creating. Take a blog, for example. Just adding a table of contents within your blog is additional content that maybe you've never done before, but equally as helpful for a human too, right? But also great for an agent to be crawling. So I think a lot of this also is just so new, right? And this goes back to what I was saying about really learning from each other. The best part about my job right now is honestly networking with tons of CMOs because no one has the perfect answer. We're all learning from each other. We're learning new tips and tricks. And, I'm constantly in these different forums or dinners or webinars, just trying to absorb as much as I can, test where we think makes sense for us, and then see if we have those right results. And I think it's important to be able to continue to learn as we all figure this out.
Definitely. That's something we're a big proponent of at Finite. And I can't tell you how many CMOs I've had on recently that say, oh, I was at a dinner and CMO of Salesforce said this, and really bringing together that knowledge to kind of piece together all of these solutions. But I did, in your response just before, I did notice a certain challenge. So we're wanting to create second websites. We're wanting, hyper personalization at that level where it meets those 30 keyword or phrase words questions in AI. But then we're also battling against AI slop and having people notice that ingenuine content. And it's not just on socials. It could be on your website too, if you've got just some information dump blog that doesn't say anything different to your competitor, for example. How are you balancing that like production at that level to be personalized and to show up in those phrase matches with that, battle against AI slop and not just creating content for the sake of content, that quality, quantity piece?
Sure. I think it first just starts with a proper personalization strategy. So often, a lot of CMOs that I chat with, they don't know where to begin with personalization. They tend to overcomplicate it. They think about every single product offering, every service, every persona, and that becomes this wild matrix that they feel they have to solve for. Now, what's amazing about our team is we run on Contentful. We run on Contentful personalization. And so I get the best of being able to test this out in very different ways. And one of the things that we found is really just very simple. We treat our audiences in very big buckets and have very simple personalization that has really amazing impact. So an example for you is if you come to our website, we have like understanding cookies to know if you have been to our website before or if you're a first-time visitor. We serve up very different content depending on what that is. Similarly, if you are a marketer or if you're a technical individual, like a developer, you see very different websites. Now, the result of that is, especially on the marketer side, we've actually seen 195% increase in our click-through rates by personalizing our content for marketers versus trying to just speak to everyone. Another great example of this is using our eyebrow header at the top of our website. We have this really amazing event that we host for prospects called Contentful at the Cinema. And we buy out AMC theaters all over the world, and we host movie premiere events before they actually are out in the market. And so we've done this with Formula One, who's a customer of ours, Wicked, Devil Wears Prada. It's been like this really fun, bring your family. It's very, light and engaging. We've gotten a really great response rate. But a big reason is because we actually localize our invitations on our website. So if I'm hosting an event, let's say in London, it says at the top, like, hey, London, come join Contentful at the Cinema. And we have seen a 51% increase just in our registrations to these events when we are localizing by the city that we are trying to promote. So these are just very simple tweaks to your website. This is not a website overhaul. This is not generating necessarily more content. It's just being a little tighter in how you're thinking, tighter in who you're trying to contact, and just being human about it. I mean, that's another big thing with us is, everyone gets so stuck in B2B, B2C, and at Contentful, we believe in B2H, business to human. And we're really trying to talk to people as humans when you come to our site and really acknowledge, what that means and what that experience is without over personalizing and have that being uncomfortable for you from a data perspective as well.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, to be honest. That kind of level of personalization for website visitors and really captivating. And I've seen that on B2B websites myself, and I'm always impressed. But I am wondering, does that, just from a practical standpoint, does that exist as like per one website per segment? And how does like Google or AI crawl that? And does it count towards like discoverability? Would you have more luck showing up for, marketing specific phrase matches? Or is it just how does that work from a technical standpoint?
Yeah. So for us, first it starts with your strategy, right? And so originally, prior to myself joining Contentful, we were a PLG motion. And as we shifted to SLG, we also shifted away from our technical audience to marketing and really having our end users be marketing buyers, marketing end users. There's still technical aspects. Of course, we never want to leave our developers behind, but our product is really built for the ease of marketers to be able to deploy content in a structured way without having to rely on engineering to get them there. And so a big part of that for us is just keeping it very simple. When it comes to what this means for LLMs, we actually did launch our own AI visibility product called Palmata. And what that has given us is really key insights by segment, by persona, by region. I can run reports in so many different aspects to understand, is my strategy showing up the way I'm intending it to? Where am I investing the majority of my dollars in awareness, and how are prompts and content supporting awareness versus bottom of funnel? And so we've been able to actually use our own platform to do that. And now we're supporting customers doing the same. And I think these are new metrics, right? These are metrics that we've never reported on before. And this is going to become a new standard for CMOs, even reporting to their board, is how is their brand showing up? What is their AI visibility or perception, their reputation out in the world? But primarily what's in your own control. And I think that is also something marketing teams really need to think about. You have content you create that's in your control. You have content you can influence, maybe with partners or with earned media. And then there's your competitors. You can't control that at all, right? But it would be great to understand it and really understand the content they are creating and how that is changing your perception in LLMs. And so we've been able to create a solution to solve for that, which has been really exciting for our team to tackle.
I am wondering about how you, as a CMO, also are managing these external channels as well, which you don't have as much. You do have control over them, but from a reputation angle or, on executive profiling, social, these kind of new emerging channels that are within the new spheres of influence, influencing buyer behavior. We talked about the disruption of the funnel at the start. How are you taking kind of control of these? How are you balancing AI slop with quality content? And I know this is broadening the question out even further, just whatever comes to mind for you. How does personalization come into those channels as well?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to unpack there. Maybe let's start with just understanding data and performance. So one example is last year we launched this amazing report with The Atlantic, and it was based on marketers. And one of the questions was about stack ranking, what's most important to you. So marketers in North America stack ranked campaigns, whereas marketers in Europe stacked governance. No surprise there. However, wildly different topics, right? And so that was very eye opening to me because at the time we were marketing to just marketers globally, in the same type of content. And so it really gave us the opportunity of, okay, well, we're not doing the right targeting. We're not doing the right personalization if we're actually not meeting the topics that are most important to marketers in a global sense. So I think that was a big pivotal moment for us heading into this year. The same is thinking about segments, right? You look at enterprise buyers that are more sophisticated and those buyer journeys and that selling cycle is a lot longer for something that is mid-market and commercial where they are getting their information in different places. So another place that we haven't been investing in for mid-market, for example, is G2 and really understanding, how are we showing up in reviews on G2? What is our presence there? How do we have an actual strategy? Another part of this, which is every CMO should be, is just data driven, just looking at your data and what's performing and what's not performing. Something also surprising for us is in France, ads on Spotify, like they perform really well for us. And so we're now investing more in France with ads on Spotify. And does that mean I'm doing that globally across the board? No, it's looking at what is working and deciding like where we're going to dive in, what's most best for our business, support our sellers to getting the right leads and really supporting that conversion rate. It can't just be this blanket strategy. So I think the more that you can leverage the data that is at your fingertips, really looking at in a granular level by channel, by region, by segment, I think you actually can get a place of, in a sense, personalization in that way if you think in these bigger buckets.
Definitely. I love that answer. It's just foundational, isn't it? And it's something we've always been doing, but it just feels like we're able to do it at a larger scale, right? And we're able to really hone into those specific markets and specific segments. And then also the experimentation piece. It sounds like you're enabling your team to do a lot of experimentation as well, trying new channels, Spotify, G2. Is that correct? Has your leadership style adapted to this kind of experimental strategy?
I mean, to be honest, I think my leadership style has always been experimental. I'm very much, like if I think about, I often like to think of it like a scale of ambiguity. I am the farthest on ambiguity. I always joke that if my CEO said, turn the sky pink, I would just say yes, right? But that means that I hire folks that are different than me to help, balance that out. I need someone to say, well, what color pink? When do you need this by? How much money do we have? Like how long does it need to be pink, right? And so I think within my own leadership style, it's been important to me to really look at the team and who we're hiring. I think there is an important element here of both technical skills that are new, right? And being able to really understanding and doing really great prompt optimization, but also using AI to bring in data and really understand that and analyze that at a different rate. In addition to producing content, in addition to being strategic, we call that a full stack marketer, is being able to do all these things. But I think one of the things that are often not talked about enough are actually the soft skills in these individuals. And so I'm trying to find folks that are super curious, right? The ones that ask all of the questions, the ones that do want to experiment, push the boundaries, okay to fail fast, but just learn from it and go do something different. So that's not new to my leadership, regardless of AI. That's always something that I have empowered my team to do. I just think it's maybe has a shinier spotlight on it now because of the world we're in today.
Definitely. That's awesome. It sounds like you're a great CMO, and that's what we need to be doing in general, but in particular with increased competition and new environments and new channels and things like that. Are there any kind of channels that haven't worked for you or stick out as something that didn't stick? Have there been any kind of fast failures that stand out and make you think, okay, I thought that would work?
You know what? It's not necessarily the channel itself, but I do think it's interesting reevaluating the quantity. So I'll give you an example. About a year and a half ago, we hired an individual on our content team who just focuses on our webinar strategy, She came in, she did an analysis of our webinars that we were doing to date, our frequency of doing them, how, like, what was the topics, how was that working? And she came in with a proposal of like, hey, we're going to do less. We're actually going to do less, and we're going to be more focused and more strategic and thoughtful on what these topics are. And we actually only moved to, at the time, it was one webinar a month. And we saw such a higher rate in registration, participation, and conversion off those webinars by doing less. And so even the same with our social strategy, there was a moment with our social team where they, want to just completely rethink that channel. And again, just being a little bit more thoughtful on the type of content we're creating, really understanding the data of what's working and what's not working. And again, we're getting really high engagement by doing less. So I really think this is a less is more has worked for me. Like that may not be for every marketing team, but it has been really cool to see my team be a little bit more narrow in these channels and really adopting and learning from the data we've been collecting in the performance, and also not being afraid to pivot in the moment. Another webinar example, going back to the Atlantic report, we had hosted a webinar on the report, which was awesome. And halfway through the promotion, like things were not performing very well. And the content team and the web team came to me like, hey, we're just going to try a completely new web page. We're going to A/B test it and see what happens. And I was like, okay, like, sure, let's go try that. Right. And they flipped the page and like instantly we started seeing a spike in registration. So even that, like not even waiting for the webinar to not do well and underperform, it was like already seeing that data of things were a little bit slower in terms of traffic than we had expected. So what do we just change now? So that's what honestly I really admire in my team, is that constant inspection, constantly wanting to make things better. And I've seen that come through in so many different channels. So it's not necessarily doing a channel less or more, or a different channel over the other. I think it's actually looking at each channel, the data, performance, what is the quality content that is performing the best, and how we can rally around that instead.
That is so interesting, Elizabeth, because honestly, all the conversations I have are about scale, like doing more, 90 AI agents, millions of pieces of content. Even LinkedIn themselves is saying you have to post once a day, otherwise no one will see you. And yeah, we are in this environment where it feels like things have been ramped up 10 times. And when we think about that quality versus quantity question that I mentioned at the start, like that is also a great part of that answer, that like quantity, no, not at all. Or maybe even selective quantity, choosing what you decide to scale up is more important than scaling everything up at all.
The LinkedIn example is really interesting. So AI has had a lot of tells, right? And those tells have evolved. So it started with the M dash, right? It's like every time someone used an M dash, right? Then it was like the formatting of just kind of these bold statements and structure of formatting. Mm-hmm. But now it's actually certain phrases that are constantly repeated. And once you start to see them enough, I mean, I just look at it as, there's like many leaders that I have admired over the years. I love the content they produce. And now that I'm starting to see this change of them using AI, which I don't think is wrong, by the way, like I use AI all the time. I use it to help generate ideas, help produce my first draft before I add, my own voice to that, right? But if you just go straight from creation to publishing without your own judgment, your own personal experiences, your own you really filtered onto that, you know what I mean? I've already started to lose trust in those leaders, because it shows not a sense of care. There is a sense of, just doing something fast. To your point, maybe it's just trying to have that frequency. And I don't think that's the right thing to do. I miss people being human. Like I miss people just really being themselves. And, I'm wondering at what point will that be its own collapse, honestly, and start to change. I have started to use M dashes again. I just can't help it. I love them. I'm not gonna not use an M dash, but that doesn't mean that my post is made with AI,
No, but there are so many subtle ones, and the more you use them to write your own content, you're like, oh, it's when there's a statement, and then Claude will be like, that is why. Like, to me, I see that everywhere. Oh,
Or
or like,
leaders who are gonna win will do blah blah blah. It's just like these certain
yes, most
phrases.
leaders don't know this.
Yes, exactly. So once you start to see it, and to be honest, it's really like I'll see it again in my drafting, right? And I'm just like, oh, that doesn't sound
Yeah,
right. I would never say that. And so, it's things like that, that it's your own experience, and then it's way easier to recognize. And so that is where that slop comes in. And honestly, that's when you're just scroll past it and you're not breaking through the noise anymore. And that's really the problem, right? Like, how do you find that balance of breaking through the noise, being an active participant, moving fast, trying to scale, but really having it be high quality? And to be honest, I think maybe people need to slow down a bit.
agree. Especially on LinkedIn, I do think it is a bit of its own beast at this point.
Yes.
Like all those dead comments, like that are just AI. Like it's like as if agents are just talking to other agents, and
Yes,
agents are
which they
writing
probably
posts.
are.
And this is the thing, and I think it's particularly bad with LinkedIn because I almost feel like the business model. I hope LinkedIn doesn't see this, but the business model is like a little bit strange or prepared for its own downfall because LinkedIn is a platform where everyone wants to get something out of it for themselves, as opposed to just like contributing or even observing as much. It's like
Right.
I'm on LinkedIn because I want something from it, and if everyone wants something from it, it just feels like it's going to collapse. I don't know. I've been thinking
Yeah.
about that lately.
No, it's an interesting perspective for sure. I totally get that. I think like that's why for me, not every post, but I do tend to talk a lot about my personal life and try to tie that back to business problems because again, that's me, like I am a mom of four. I am working a ton. I am traveling all over the place. Like it's easy to get daily inspiration outside of work for work. And so those are a lot of the thought leadership things that I talk about to try to bring that more human element back to it.
Great tip, definitely. Sincerity is definitely the way forward in those anecdotes and humanized experiences
Yes.
as well, especially as a mum of four. Well done. But that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Finite podcast today, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jodi. I really have.